The 1980s were a wild time in tractor engineering, maybe too wild. Companies pushed technology to its limits. Complex electronics, experimental transmissions, futuristic designs, machines that looked unstoppable on paper, but crashed hard in the real world. Some were too expensive, some were too complicated, and some were simply decades ahead of what farmers actually needed. Get ready, because these are the 10 over-engineered 1980s tractors that failed harder than anyone expected. Number 1. John Deere 60 Series. The John Deere 60 Series was launched at a time when farmers were struggling with low crop prices, high interest rates, and shrinking profit margins. Deere wanted to prove that it could build the tractor of the future, something more advanced than anything on the market. So it packed the 60 Series with electronics, automated monitors, sophisticated hydraulic controllers, and an early form of system diagnostics. On paper, it sounded revolutionary. In reality, it became one of the most frustrating tractors of its era. The electronics were the biggest issue. In the 1980s, farm equipment electronics were nowhere near as reliable as today. Moisture seeped into connectors, wiring harnesses cracked in the cold. Sensors suffered from dust, vibration, and voltage fluctuations. A failing sensor could send the tractor into limp mode or worse, shut it down completely. Many farmers found themselves stranded in the middle of planting season because a $30 sensor failed. The hydraulic system was equally problematic. Deere wanted smoother, more precise hydraulic functions, but the complexity backfired. Pressure control valves would stick, hydraulic circuits would lose flow, and the system was extremely sensitive to even tiny amounts of contamination. In dusty, muddy farming conditions, that was a recipe for constant trouble. Another issue was repairability. Older Deere models were famously simple. Any farmer with basic tools could fix them. But the 60 Series required specialized tools, expensive electronic modules, and technicians trained in digital diagnostics. In a decade when many farms were going bankrupt, repair costs became a major burden. Farmers called the 60 Series too smart for its own good. It introduced concepts that future tractors would eventually use successfully, but the technology wasn't ready. The result was one of the most over-engineered failures in Deere's history. Number 2. International Harvester 2+2 Series. International Harvester wanted to build something completely new, something that would outperform both 2WD tractors and conventional articulated 4WDs. The result was the 2+2 series, instantly recognizable by its long hood and forward articulated engine design. Nicknamed the Anteater, the tractor promised improved traction, better weight distribution, and tighter turning. But instead of becoming an icon of innovation, it became infamous for its engineering flaws. The articulation design was the heart of the problem. The idea of placing the engine in the front half of the articulation joint made sense for traction, but it created enormous stress on the pivot. Under heavy tillage, the articulation knuckles wore rapidly, bushings failed, and cracks developed around the joint. Most 4WD tractors stress test the articulation joint with the engine behind it, but IH put all the weight in front, multiplying the load. The driveline was another disaster. Power had to travel through the articulation joint to reach the rear wheels, requiring a long drive shaft with multiple joints and seals. All these moving parts were exposed to mud, dust, and vibration. U-joints wore out frequently. Seals leaked. The drive shaft sometimes failed entirely during heavy work. Inside the cab, operators suffered from excessive bouncing and vibration because the cab was mounted right behind the articulation joint. Every time the tractor flexed, the cab rocked violently, making long work days exhausting. I marketed the 2+2 as the future of farming, but it ended up being a strange hybrid that satisfied no one. It wasn't nimble like a 2WD, nor was it durable like a true 4WD. The idea was ahead of its time, but the engineering wasn't refined enough. The 2+2 remains a fascinating failure from a company desperately trying to survive the turbulent night. Number 3. Ford TW35. The Ford TW35 was marketed as the king of the TW lineup, a high-horsepower turbocharged machine capable of competing with giants like John Deere's 30 and 40 series or IH's 50 and 88 series. With nearly 190 horsepower, it delivered the power farmers wanted. But Ford made one major mistake. It paired that massive engine with a drivetrain that simply wasn't strong enough. The central flaw was the transmission. Ford engineers attempted to upgrade the gearbox but failed to beef it up enough for the increased torque produced by the turbocharged 401 engine. Under heavy load like deep ripping, plowing, or hauling silage wagons, the gears experienced extreme stress. Many farmers reported chipped gears, sheared shafts, and complete transmission failures within a few hundred hours. The rear differential was another weak point. Bearings wore prematurely, housings cracked, and the entire rear end was prone to catastrophic failure in demanding conditions. The TW35 became known as a tractor that could outpull anything, but couldn't survive doing it. Then came the hydraulic problems. Ford attempted to modernize the system with more complex valves and pumps, but contamination, overheating, and pressure loss were common complaints. Hydraulics would weaken mid-operation, causing implements to drop or jerk unexpectedly. Despite its strong engine, the TW35 developed a reputation as a money pit. Repair bills were high, downtime was frequent, and the resale value plummeted. The tractor was over-engineered in all the wrong places. Too much power, too little durability. Number 4. Fiat 180/90 Turbo. Few tractors from the 1980s were as visually striking as the Fiat 80/90 Turbo. With its aggressive styling, sharp lines, and thunderous turbocharged engine, it became one of Europe's most iconic and desirable machines. Farmers loved its sound, its power, and its commanding presence, but this tractor had a fatal flaw. It ran dangerously hot. The engineers pushed the 80/90 Turbo's 6-cylinder engine to its limits, extracting high horsepower from a relatively compact block. The cooling system, however, was not upgraded enough to match the engine's heat output. This resulted in chronic overheating, especially during heavy tillage, transport, or work in warm climates. Head gaskets blew frequently. Piston rings wore prematurely. In severe cases, the engine block cracked. The transmission also contributed to the tractor's downfall. Fiat introduced a multi-range gearbox that looked great on paper, but performed poorly in real conditions. It slipped under load, shifted inconsistently, and sometimes refused to engage gears altogether. Rebuilding the system was extremely costly. Hydraulics weren't much better. The pump struggled to maintain consistent pressure, hoses leaked, and modern implements often overloaded the system. Farmers found themselves constantly repairing leaks or replacing seals. Despite its failures, the 80/90 Turbo remains beloved among collectors today. It was an engineering work of art, but one that pushed itself too hard without the reliability to back it up. The tractor looked like a champion, but performed like a liability. Number 5. Massey Ferguson 3690. The Massey Ferguson 3690 was a masterpiece of ambition. It wasn't just a tractor, it was supposed to be a technological revolution. MF packed it with electronic monitoring systems, digital displays, electronic PTO controls, early diagnostics, dashboard computers, and the new DynaShift transmission, a 4-step power shift system that allowed seamless shifting without using the clutch. It was brilliant engineering decades ahead of its time. But the real world exposed its weaknesses quickly. The electronics were extremely fragile. Early circuit boards couldn't handle dust, vibration, temperature swings, or moisture, all common on farms. Sensors failed so frequently that farmers often carried spares in their toolboxes. Wiring harnesses corroded, relays stuck, dashboard screens flickered or died, and sometimes the tractor wouldn't start simply because a single sensor refused to communicate. The DynaShift transmission was another major issue. The system relied on hydraulically controlled packs of clutch discs, regulated by electronic solenoids. When it worked, it was beautiful, smooth, and efficient. But when one solenoid stuck, or one clutch pack wore prematurely, the entire system failed. Repair costs were enormous. The hydraulic system also suffered because it was tied to the same electronics controlling the transmission and PTO. A software glitch could cause hydraulics to stop responding entirely, creating dangerous situations with mounted implements. Farmers wanted durability, not digital headaches, and the 3690 delivered nothing but frustration. It became a symbol of over-engineering, too advanced, too complex, and too unreliable for 1980s farming conditions. Number 6. Belarus 925. For decades, Belarus tractors had a reputation for being rugged, simple, and nearly indestructible. Their charm was their lack of sophistication. Any farmer with basic tools could fix one. But the Belarus 925 was different. It was a bold Soviet attempt to modernize and compete with Western brands that were rapidly adopting new technologies like power shift transmissions, advanced hydraulics, and electronic monitoring systems. Unfortunately, this rushed modernization turned the 925 into one of the most unreliable tractors Belarus ever produced. The biggest issue was the experimental hydraulic system, which was far more complex than anything Belarus had built before. It used a multi-stage pump with electronically regulated valves meant to give smoother and more precise control of implements. Instead, the system malfunctioned constantly. Pressure would drop without warning, the lift arms jerked violently, and some farmers reported the three-point hitch refusing to lift even a lightweight implement. Dust, moisture, and temperature fluctuations would easily confuse the basic sensors and cause the entire system to fail. The gearbox was equally problematic. Belarus attempted to introduce synchronized gears, something Western brands already had, but the synchronizers were made from inferior materials and wore out rapidly. Within 510 hours, many tractors lost the ability to shift smoothly and began grinding gears or getting stuck between ranges. Transmission rebuilds were expensive and required parts that were often hard to source during the final years of the Soviet collapse. Electrical problems plagued the machine as well. Poor wiring insulation, low-quality connectors, and inconsistent alternators caused frequent starting failures, sudden shutdowns, and flickering dashboard indicators. Belarus tractors were supposed to be simple and strong, but the 925 became the opposite: complicated, fragile, and frustrating. Farmers wanted the dependable, old-school Belarus toughness. What they got instead was a confusing, unreliable hybrid of poorly executed Western-inspired engineering that failed hard on real farms. Number 7. Zetor Crystal 1 2011. The Zetor Crystal 1 2011 was built during a time when Eastern European manufacturers wanted to prove they could compete with the big Western brands. Zetor decided to enter the high-horsepower market with a bold, heavy, overbuilt tractor featuring enormous pulling capacity, a luxurious cab, and advanced hydraulics. But while the machine looked impressive on paper, its engineering flaws quickly became legendary. The engine was large, powerful, and extremely heavy. But Zetor made a critical mistake. The tractor's frame wasn't strong enough to support the engine under constant heavy load. After a few seasons of pulling deep plows or heavy discs, many farmers discovered cracks forming around the engine mounts and chassis connection points. The structural failures were expensive to repair and often required full welding jobs that weakened the tractor even further. The hydraulic system was another problem. Zetor attempted to modernize the Crystal series with a large hydraulic block featuring multiple distribution valves, but the seals failed frequently and the system leaked relentlessly. Oil pressure would drop suddenly, causing implements to jerk or stop lifting altogether. Repairs were time-consuming because Zetor's hydraulic layout was extremely cramped with difficult access to components. The cab looked comfortable, but its ventilation and heating system was overly complex and built with cheap plastics and wiring. Fans burned out frequently, ducting cracked, and the air conditioning worked poorly if it worked at all. As a result, farmers found themselves sweating in summer and freezing during winter, staring at a dashboard filled with flickering warning lights. Zetor had big ambitions with the Crystal 1 2011, but the rushed engineering and poor material quality turned it into a massive failure. It was simply too complicated for its own good and too fragile for real working conditions. Number 8. Renault 155 54. The Renault 155 54 was a stylish, modern-looking tractor that caught a lot of attention when it debuted in Europe. With its bright yellow body, massive hood, and high horsepower output, it promised to push Renault into the big tractor category. But beneath the bold exterior was a deeply flawed engineering package that struggled with reliability from day one. The most infamous problem was overheating. Renault used a powerful engine but paired it with an undersized radiator and inefficient airflow design. During heavy tillage or long transport runs, the engine temperatures skyrocketed. Coolant boiled over, head gaskets blew, pistons seized. Farmers working in Mediterranean climates found the tractor nearly unusable during summer months. The power shift transmission was another over-engineered failure. Renault wanted to compete with European brands like Deutz-Fahr and Fiat, so they introduced a multi-speed shifting system with hydraulic clutches. But the system was fragile and intolerant of heavy loads. Clutch packs slipped, hydraulic pressure dropped randomly, and many transmissions failed completely within just a few seasons. The electrical system was equally troublesome. Poor grounding, thin wiring, and weak connectors caused random shutdowns, flickering lights, and dead dashboards. In many cases, the tractor wouldn't start simply because the wiring harness had corroded somewhere behind the dash. Even the hydraulics had problems. The pump suffered from cavitation, hoses blew frequently, and the system couldn't maintain pressure consistently. Farmers quickly lost confidence in the tractor and resale values collapsed. The Renault 155/54 showed promise, but its engine, transmission, and electronics were simply not engineered well enough. Its impressive appearance hid a tractor that failed spectacularly under real-world demands. Number 9. Deutz-Fahr DX 8 Series. Deutz-Fahr was famous for its air-cooled engines, which were reliable and simple on smaller tractors. But when the company attempted to scale up this technology for the massive DX8 series, things went terribly wrong. These tractors were meant to compete with high-horsepower giants from Case IH and John Deere, but their over-engineered air-cooled engines quickly became a liability. Air-cooled engines rely on airflow over fins to dissipate heat, but on a 200-plus horsepower tractor, this system struggled from the start. During heavy tillage, the engines heated rapidly. In hot weather, they overheated even faster. Many farmers reported glowing exhausts, warped cylinder heads, and seized pistons. Ironically, the tractor designed to avoid the complications of liquid cooling became one of the most heat-prone machines of the decade. The hydraulic system was another failure point. Deutz-Fahr tried to deliver higher flow and precision by using a complex multi-pump arrangement, but cavitation was common. Pumps would scream, jerk, or lose pressure entirely. Implements lifted slowly or unpredictably. Frequent pump rebuilds became normal for owners. Electronics also became a major headache. Control modules were sensitive, wiring connectors loosened from vibration, and dashboard indicators behaved erratically. After only a few seasons, many DX8 tractors looked like a patchwork of repaired wiring, replaced modules, and makeshift cooling upgrades. The tractor's sheer size made basic maintenance extremely difficult. Farmers often needed to remove panels, shields, and cooling fins just to reach simple components. The Deutz-Fahr DX8 series was a bold attempt to scale up a proven concept, but air cooling simply couldn't handle big tractor workloads. The result was a machine that overheated, broke down, and frustrated owners until it faded into obscurity. Number 10. Case IH 3294. The Case IH 3294 was stuck in the worst possible moment in corporate history, the transition between the old Case 94 series and the newly developing Magnum line. Instead of building a clean new tractor from scratch, Case IH attempted to merge older Case engineering with newer IH-inspired features, resulting in a hybrid that was over-engineered, under-tested, and unpopular. One of the biggest failures was the electronic linkage control system, which was supposed to automatically adjust the three-point hitch based on soil resistance and load. But the sensors were unreliable, the linkage motors failed frequently, and the system constantly malfunctioned. Implements would rise unexpectedly, drop suddenly, or refuse to respond at all. Farmers who relied on precise depth control for plowing or cultivation found the tractor unusable. The power shift transmission was another problem. Unlike the robust transmissions used in the later Magnum series, the 3294 featured an older design that struggled under heavy load. Shifts were harsh, clutch packs wore out quickly, and sudden failures were common. Repairing the transmission required extensive labor and highly specialized parts, making it one of the most expensive tractors to maintain in the entire Case IH lineup. The hydraulic system also suffered from overheating due to poor flow design. During heavy use, such as running large planters or tillage implements, hydraulic temperatures spiked quickly, leading to limp performance or complete shutdowns. Seals burst, pumps wore prematurely, and many farmers found themselves constantly topping up hydraulic oil. The 3294 became known as a transitional tractor that nobody wanted, too modern to be simple, too outdated to be reliable. It represents a classic case of overengineering during a chaotic era of corporate restructuring, and it failed hard because of it. These tractors proved one thing: being advanced doesn't always mean being successful. Some pushed innovation so far that reliability crumbled, support vanished, and farmers walked away. But their failures shaped the machines we use today. If you enjoyed this deep dive into overengineering gone wrong, hit like, subscribe, and tell me which tractor shocked you the most. Thanks for watching, and get ready, because the next video exposes even more machines the world wasn't ready for.